define your brand really tightly, because the other thing with social media is you are giving up a little bit of your storytelling now, especially if you're working with influencers or content creators. You're asking other people to tell your story for you. And to be able to do that, you need to be really clear on what that story is.
Building a beauty brand takes more than a good product. You need a strong digital presence, a story that resonates, and a website that converts. Welcome to the Scaling Emerging Beauty Podcast, a podcast that provides actionable insights and tactical tips for brands that are looking to grow from 0 to 20 million from D2C to big retail. In today's episode, I'm joined by Sarah Gallagher, fractional CMO, CEO of digital agency Gamma Waves, and overall e-commerce expert. In this episode, we talk about things like storytelling, conversion, why it's really important for brands to consider A/B testing, and some of the other tactical tips to help you convert a one-time visitor to your site to a loyal customer for the future. For any founder that's interested and truly trying to build and retain a guest, this is going to be an important episode. I'm excited for you to hear the conversation. Let's get into it. As of the published date of this episode, I am an associate of Ulta Beauty. The ideas and thoughts represented here are my own and not that of my employer. Sarah, I'm so happy to have you on the show today. I love talking to folks who have worked for brands that have scaled and made it big and are doing new things, because it just shows the world of beauty is ever evolving and changing. And I love just hearing those then and now stories. So knowing that you've worked for major brands, both as an employee and as a fractional consultant, I'd love to just hear how you came to the world of beauty or retail and marketing. What led you here?
Yeah, so what led me to beauty was truly e-commerce. So my career has been spent entirely in the e-com space. And so I wasn't really in any specific industry at first. I worked in footwear. I worked on Shaq's first e-com site. I worked for the North Face, did apparel, was all over the place. And then when I did start doing more fractional work, I was exposed to more types of brands. And so one of the earlier beauty brands that I worked with is a company called Skin Tea, which was a beauty drink that made your skin look amazing. And so that was really my first experience, but then got to go on and work actually with the current agency that I'm running now with Supergoop, which was an emerging brand when we worked with them, and we were actually able to help them scale to acquisition and massive success and become the brand they are today. So I've just gotten to, and now we work with a lot of more other startups, the smaller beauty brands. One of our brands now is Jouer Cosmetics, which is like cult favorite following based in LA and really growing quickly. So it's just been really fun to be exposed to all of the range of brands in the space.
That's so cool. Being with Supergoop when they were still an emerging brand has to be kind of like an iconic flex now, because I mean, who knew, right? That they were going to be the brand that they are today. I mean, they're definitely one of my favorite sunscreens. And I mean, like an OG sunscreen that provided great coverage and was very inclusive. And I say that as, you know, a fairly melanated person myself who has tried the sunscreens where I look like a ghost. So I love to hear it. So I'm thinking, as you talk about leading an agency, as you talk about working for a lot of small brands, I'd love to kind of talk a little bit about the consumer or winning them over, how you talk to them, because that to me is one of the things that is one of the ways you kind of win people over in beauty. And so I'm sure that you were able to tell a very good, unique brand story, right? That's probably one of your superpowers. And many stories are unique, but they don't all stick. So I'd love for you to just share a little bit based on your background, like what makes a brand story memorable? And what do you find either when you're talking with founders or when you're hearing about the brand that makes you say, oh, there's something here, I want to work with you guys?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that makes a brand story stick is that it's true. And it comes from the brand's real story. Like, why were they started? Why do they exist? What problem are they solving? So for Supergoop, I mean, you brought it up, right? One of the pillars that they came out with was to be inclusive, right? And so to not have a white cast, they hated that. That was one of the reasons they were started. And then the other sort of brand pillar that they had was to be a cleaner sunscreen. And both of those things, when they were a new brand, were very unique in the space. It almost didn't exist. And so part of telling that brand story was educating like why that was important to them, why they really like were making the product to solve these problems. And so it's telling the story and also telling it in really engaging and interactive ways. So is that a diagram that shows everything that goes in? Is it lists of ingredients? Is it lists of no ingredients, like what we never would use? Like all of those kinds of things play into it. And I think the key for the online storytelling is really telling that story in like bite-sized chunks throughout the customer journey. So you're getting it in as someone like learns more, is pulled in deeper. It's not like a big about page. It's like all the little detailed elements that tell the story for you.
That's really good. Do you feel like there's anything different with telling stories these days, especially in this age of social media where things can be clickbaity and there's so many more brands that you're kind of competing against? You know, I feel like you're just vying for folks' attention. Do you think that makes it harder to tell your story, or do you think it more so challenges you to figure out how to tell the story better? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
It's definitely a challenge, but it's a good challenge in that, kind of like what I was saying, the challenge is really define your brand really tightly, because the other thing with social media is you are giving up a little bit of your storytelling now, especially if you're working with influencers or content creators. You're asking other people to tell your story for you. And to be able to do that, you need to be really clear on what that story is, so that as you create those relationships, they know exactly, like, they know your why, they get excited by it, they understand it, and then can communicate it really well. So it's a challenge, but it's a good one. Like, you should be really clear on your story and be able to communicate it in ways that other people can communicate it too. And then that story gets even bigger. So it's a challenge that can help you actually grow even faster than just trying to only do it yourself.
I like that. And as we think about telling the story, and the goal of that being either, you know, selling product or gaining new customers, retaining some of those customers, I'd love to talk a little bit about tips that you might have for brands that are looking to maintain that kind of lifetime value of the customer. Are there tactics that you might use for a customer that's been around for a while that are different from those that you might use for someone who's never heard of the brand, who's just at the point of brand awareness? And what does that look like, as you talked a little bit about that, you know, using the different challenges to still gain that customer and tell that story?
Yeah. Yeah. So for our longer term customers who we love, we also have more information about them. And so what are they looking at on our site? What's exciting them? What are we releasing that's new, that's related to something that they've liked before that they might want to know about? Can you also bring them into community a little bit more? Are there surveys that make them feel like you're actually hearing them and listening to them? So all of those tactics. Also, now we do have the ability with all of our different like email, SMS platforms of using AI to actually just take advantage of triggers that those person, hey, like this person came to the site, we could see they were clicking around a lot, and then they left, and we know who they are. Maybe they weren't finding what they were looking for. Can we reach out and help them, right? And triggering those kinds of activities is really smart with the customers who we know. With that new customer, definitely trying to learn what they're interested in, either by, you know, explicit surveys or by looking at the signals of what they're looking at, seeing if we can capture them, and also making sure that the funnel that they're coming through is that very like, they're new to us. We want them to understand who we are or what the product is and why it exists, and like try to catch them again with that story and interest and make yourself stand apart.
I love that. That's great. And what about category? I know you said you've worked in retail, or kind of for traditional apparel, if you will, and also have been in the beauty space. Do you find that category plays a role at all in kind of winning the sale or winning the customer over?
Tell me more what you mean by category. Like, do you mean
Like,
that industry, like apparel versus beauty versus
yeah, like, are there
CPG?
things that might work in apparel to win the
Mm,
consumer over, right? Or to pique their interest that are a little bit different in beauty? Like, I know if, let's
yes.
say it's Coachella season, I'm not a Coachella girly anymore, but it's Coachella season, or we're getting ready for the Cowboy
Yeah.
Carter tour, there are
Yeah.
probably things related to like apparel, Western clothing that are going to pique folks' interest if you know that that's your consumer base. So are there things that might help you to win the consumer over that might work in certain categories versus other? I'm just, wondering your thoughts there, having worked across.
Yes. Yes, I can expand on that. So there absolutely are differences across industries in like sort of what captures people and what kind of triggers you can use. So I would say that awareness, like in general, that awareness of your customer and what season they're in is going to be relevant, but it might be more relevant in different ways depending on the industry. So exactly like what you're saying, we were with another brand called 12th Tribe that is very like festival driven, vacation driven. So when those like wedding season driven, so they know the seasonality of their product. I think with beauty, we do see that like capitalized on a little bit where people are aware of broader seasons. Like you're going into summer, right? You're going to have different issues with dryness. You might want to use a more cream-based makeup or, vice versa with winter. And I think also another big difference though, industry-wise with beauty from apparel is the importance of ingredients and the importance of functionality. So I think people sometimes with apparel, they're going to just decide based on the style. If they know the brand, they may or may not be looking for quality. They might be more attracted to a specific price point. But with beauty, often now people want to know ingredients. They want to know details around the formulation. And I think they also want to understand more about how it's going to look on them, because that's a little bit easier to show in beauty than it is still today in apparel, even though we try. So, doing things like swatching on multiple skin tones, even try on now using AR is becoming more and more popular and more accessible for brands to do. So yeah, I definitely think there are different like levels of awareness about your customer, but whatever the industry, kind of seeking what are those triggers or universalities around either season or event or what your customer is looking for that you can try to find and then use to build campaigns or actions around.
Awesome. I love that. And I definitely think on the beauty side, I can see how ingredients tell a bigger part of the story, and they can kind of be a driver for many consumers as to why they might purchase, where the event itself might be the driver for the purchase if you're on the apparel side. So definitely interesting things for the brand marketers and the brands to keep in mind. I also know as we talk
Yes.
about beauty and experiences, that's a big part of the beauty world, right? It's like you want to touch, you want to feel how the serum is on your skin, how it falls. Does it drip? Is it kind of a glob? But experiences also include digital experiences. You talked about AI and being able to, try things on virtually, but also in real life. Can you talk a little bit about how brands can think about their website as a continued extension of some of the experiences that they might have in a retail storefront, or maybe even with a consumer engagement, like with an activation at a concert or at a pop-up?
Yeah, I love thinking about that. That's a great question. I think brands should absolutely be thinking about their website and their physical experience all in one, whether or not they have owned brick and mortar stores or not, because we know some of the smaller brands don't. So if you're starting in that like pop up, or activation at a concert, making sure that you do have ways to either capture customer information or let them find you online. So is that a QR code? Is that a sign up, like enter to win? Are you doing product sampling? And does that have like clear ways for them to find your product online? And then what are you doing online to reflect what you're doing in the store? So on your website, are you talking about that pop-up? Are you creating content around it that maybe doesn't even live on the site, but it might live in emails or it might live in your social? And like, how are you tying all of the things together? And then sort of at a functional level, like, if you do have a store, are you using a POS that's tied to your e-com store's POS so that you're looking at that customer in a unified way so that you know, like, hey, this person came into the store and then they went to my site, or they went to the site and then came to the store, or they came to the store and then now they're just subscribing through the site. And that's great. We love them, but we can also like invite them back to the store for a new product launch or things like that. Get really powerful when you talk about like building community and customer lifetime value.
That's stuff. And those are the things that I think more and more brands are going to need to pay attention to, because it'll add that personalized experience and also allow, especially some of the emerging brands, to reach the consumer in a way that maybe some of the legacy brands have a tougher time doing, because it's a little bit bigger, it's less personable, all of those things, right? And those things hopefully kind of matter. As I also still think about this digital experience, I'd love to talk a little bit about the website itself too, as we kind of focus on the consumer, all of the things that they experience with a brand. Winning the sale, I've recently learned, is directly tied to the ease of the site. So kind of like the fewer clicks, the fewer, make it easy, where it's just like, boom, I can add it. Boom, you got my information and it's coming to me. So how do you assess a site to understand if it's good, if it's so? What kind of questions do you ask, or what things do you actually do to look at a site and assess how good or bad it is?
Yeah, so we have actually a 75-point audit that we go through, like top to bottom. But to really make it straightforward, I think anyone can do their own audit, and we actually do publish that on our website. But you look at first the back end, because what you're saying is absolutely true. The better, easier your site is to use, faster it is to use, make sure there's no bugs, all of those things, the back end, like not sexy, not branded, but like, is it working and is it fast? The better that is, the higher your conversion rate is, no matter how the site looks. So that's like the first half, is that what I call back end. And then there's the front end piece. And that is a little bit more subjective, but it's going through that customer journey. So where are they landing? Are they coming in from a meta ad or from one of your emails? Is it the homepage or is it a product page? And then how is that page laid out? Is it easy for the customer to find the product they're looking for? Is it easy for them to understand, what's in stock, what's not in stock, see the colors available, all the things that they have to choose from before they click add to cart? And then that add to cart, through the cart experience, is the cart clean? Is there anything in cart that might be like making them like take a moment and question? We don't want them to do that. We want them to keep moving. So like judging everything by how is it keeping someone moving and how is it answering their questions before they even ask. So like if you've got free returns, say free returns, right? They don't even need to question it. They don't need to go look for it, right? What I call trust signals, like answer all the questions before they're asked, and don't throw anything in there that's like, wait, what's that? I have to think about that now. Well, I'm on my phone. I've got social media over here, and now I just forgot that I was even shopping on your site. So so just keeping them moving. So that's how I really assess, is a site sort of like, how would I rank it, right? Like, what would I grade it? And what would I change to have the biggest impact on conversion most quickly?
That's really good info. Have you found any like low hanging fruit, like you mentioning kind of like free returns? I'm like, that is one of those like one of those signals that you don't realize. It's like, oh, well, if I don't like it, then I can always return it. But are there other kind of easy trust signals like that you find are easy wins that brands can kind of use fairly quickly?
Yeah, I do think in cart, free shipping and free returns, if those things are true, calling that out in both places. I think also with higher price point product, having a concierge, like the ability to either chat with someone right now or call someone right now if they need help, is an unlock for people. We definitely see that increasing conversion. And then I would also say what is often very low hanging fruit is that performance optimization. So you can spend a few weeks just like cleaning up code. So that's doing things like implementing lazy load. So you're not loading really big content blocks before someone even needs to see them, which slows down the site, which then they're like, something's wrong with the site. And that's that subtle, they're not thinking through it, but it's a subtle undermining of the experience. So that's always, we just worked with a client think we spent 3 weeks just cleaning that up. We didn't change a single thing about what the site looked like, just cleaned up the way everything was built and loading in, increased conversion by 37%. So for this client, that's going to be millions of dollars over the year because they're like a nice size mid-market client, but that's a huge unlock and something that's like, someone said this to me the other day, like tyranny of the urgent. It's not fun to think about just cleaning up code. It's fun to think about content and brand and this, but that cleaning up code sometimes is like so much more powerful. And it's just like, we got to do the housekeeping and then let's go back to doing the fun stuff. Then we have the party, right? Like, so that's a big unlock for me.
100%. Wow. That's like definitely one of those things, like small change, if you will. I don't know how easy it is to clean up code, but let's assume it's not that hard, but a big impact. Wow. Wow. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. I'd love to talk a little bit more too about your time working with Supergoop, kind of pre-acquisition. Would just love to hear from you. What was one of the most memorable campaigns or projects that you worked on while you were working with them?
Yeah, there were a couple that really come to mind. One of them was building out different landing page templates. So like I mentioned, they were a newer brand. They had to do a lot of education. And so they and we had a ton of content ideas, and we weren't sure what was going to stick and what was going to most effectively tell what then felt like a more complicated story, right? We weren't sure if people were seeking this problem out. And so we built these really flexible landing pages so that we could test different kinds of content. And we're able to run A/B tests to see, okay, is a diagram of all the ingredients feeding in, is that going to be more powerful? Or is videos of people putting the sunscreen on and showing that there's not a white cast no matter your skin tone, is that going to be more powerful? And how can we make these work for the different audiences and people looking for maybe to solve different problems? So that was one that was very memorable because it helped me think a lot about consumer behavior and what people are looking for and how they're looking for it. And also sometimes that assumptions we might make, oh, well, video is obviously going to be more powerful. Actually, it's photos and shown this way. And I think that's always different. It's different depending on, the era that we're in. It's different depending on the customer that you're serving. So that's not an answer. Everybody should just do this, not this. But it was just an interesting approach of like test everything. That was one. And then another one that just really stands out to me is we did a lot of work around loyalty with Supergoop and how they treat their loyalty customers and making sure that it was easy for them to really engage with the loyalty program, to not just feel like, okay, I'm getting points, but I don't understand really what these points mean. So we did a lot of work with loyalty and cart, and then back to that conversation around how do you make cart easy, right? So just showing in cart, you have this many points and that means this, or you're a loyalty program member and so you get this free gift, and like making that really streamlined and what I like to say, like friction free. So it didn't make someone question, it almost pushed them along more quickly. Like, oh, I get this surprise. I'm going to check out now so I can get it. So that was a really fun project to work on too, and massively increased that loyalty customer. Like if they could get someone in loyalty, that per customer is staying with them longer, spending more, all of the things.
I feel like consumers love a good incentive. It's like, who doesn't want like a free gift?
Do.
I mean, even if it's like, oh, do I need this? But like travel size or like a packet so that you can try something new. It's like, ooh, why not? Yeah, give me all the freebies.
Totally.
I love that.
Right? I mean, look at Sephora too. I mean, they do it like the most, and it's just every order you get a free sample, and you're picking your free samples, and if they just threw it in the box, it might be different, but you're opting into it, and then it feels exciting, and you're like, oh, I want this one, and it might not be here next time, so I'm gonna order now.
I'm gonna order now. Exactly. That's like that. Yep. What do they call that? A little bit of scarcity mixed with urgency. That definitely helps. I know from my apparel days, that's definitely one of those drivers that can help. It's like, oh, it's only going to be here for this season. Get it now. And then, or else you miss out kind of thing, right?
Yeah, completely.
I love that. And then I'd also love to just hear from you, as you've gone through worked with a number of brands, bigger, smaller, what do you think is one of the things that you have learned, either from a mistake that you've made or from something that you saw as a huge success that you're like, this is something that I'm currently using and taking with me as I work with clients or as you kind of join and look to do new things?
Yeah, I think one of the main lessons that I have learned through all of this work is test everything. So I think, especially having been in e-commerce as long as I have and working with other people who are really smart and have been in e-commerce a long time, I'm still surprised by consumer behavior sometimes. And we will often, now we do a ton of A/B testing and we'll have hypotheses like, we think if we change this, then this will happen. And customers just often surprise you, especially maybe when you're close to the brand and you think, well, of course, this is so obvious and this should be important. And customers are like, no, actually, I'm going to behave in this other way that you didn't expect. And you're like, oh. So I think testing everything, but then you learn something from that test, and then that informs your next test. And we use data to build out the hypotheses for all of it. But it's just sometimes what you guess a customer is going to do, they don't. So that's always something that I like to remind myself of and remind my teams and brands of, is like, test everything. And now, like, A/B test platforms are so accessible and so inexpensive, and brands can use them themselves. They don't need developers necessarily to run them. So I think like every brand should be testing, especially when they're doing like creating content or like putting effort into something. Like, test it and make sure that it's doing what you think it's going to do.
I was actually going to ask that as you were talking a little bit about the testing that you did with Supergoop. Is there a threshold of sales or a certain size for a brand to reach before they start testing? Because I know in some cases the cost might be prohibitive, or maybe you don't have a big enough sample size depending on how big or small the brand is, but would love to get an idea of when do you think what's too small, and, based on numbers that you've seen for testing, when does it become accessible?
Yeah, that's an important question, because you can test if you're really small, but it's going to take you forever to get test results if you don't have enough traffic to get to statistical significance. So I think, once brands start getting up towards that $1 to $2 million a year mark, they're going to start having, again, depending on their price point, but you should have enough traffic to start testing with one of the smaller A/B test platforms. I mean, you can test now for, under $100 a month. And so those tests will often very quickly pay for themselves and help you build more momentum, especially if you're really smart about your data too. And like, okay, what are we testing? Can we test something that's going to make our marketing dollars more effective? So then not only are you like increasing your conversion rate, but you're also maybe reducing your cost of acquisition, or understanding this kind of traffic is converting higher or spending more or whatever. And you can make your marketing spend smarter too.
That's really good.
But I think around that mark is when you probably have enough traffic to be able to test.
Okay. Helpful to know, because I know some folks might be saying, are we big enough? Does that make sense for us? So think $1 million and hey, throw it out there and see if you are under that. But definitely check for that statistical significance, because you want to make sure that you're going to be able to get that data in enough time. Right.
Yeah, definitely. And I would still say, you can go out and talk to the A/B test platforms and see what they think, or if they even have like a lower tier that they might be willing to start you on and let you use the platform and work with it till you get to that point.
Yeah, I love that. Well, look, I always close my show by asking folks, what advice would you give to emerging brands looking to scale? It can be related to the topic that we've discussed, or it can be kind of anything that you've seen from your time working in this space. So we'd love to hear from you. What advice would you give to emerging brands?
I think the advice that I would give to emerging brands is just something you touched on earlier. Even though it can feel like there's so much noise and so much competition, I would say there's also so much space for your unique voice and your unique product. And I think I've gotten to work with so many different founders that are in the same space, like different apparel founders, different beauty founders, and they all even if they're a little bit similar, they have their unique voice. They've been able to build really successful businesses, and that's always inspiring to me. So I want to make sure that people don't get discouraged, stay inspired. There's definitely room for your solution and product and voice.
I love that. I love to end on an inspirational note, just to know, hey, you guys, there is a place for you. There is a purpose, and we're glad that you're here, for the brand founders that are listening. Yes. I love to hear it. Well, look, thank you so much, Sarah, for joining me on the show today. If folks want to follow you or follow your agency, where can they find you? And we'll make sure to include it in the show notes as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, you can find us at gammawaves.io. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm Sarah Thompson Gallagher. Please hit me up, and always happy to help if anyone has questions. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a wrap on today's episode of Scaling Emerging Beauty. Thank you again to Sarah for joining me on the show today. It was so great to hear all of her tactical tips around storytelling and also optimizing that website. If you found her information helpful and you want more information about where to find Sarah, check the show notes. And by the way, thank you for listening to this podcast. I appreciate you being here. Be sure that you subscribe so you don't miss another episode, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.